Hello, my name is James Shearn. I'm a consultant on behalf of Celegence, and today I would like to talk to you about the recently published proposal for an amendment to the MDR and the IVDR from the European Commission that was published under reference number 2023/0005 COD. So just to give you a little bit of background to this topic, at the EPSCO Health Council meeting that was held on the 14th of June in 2022, health ministers expressed their concern that severe challenges related to the implementation of MDR threaten the continued availability of certain medical devices. The Commission reported back at the EPSCO Council meeting that was held in December of 2022 and presented a proposal which included the extension to the transitional provisions of the MDR under Article 120. There was broad agreement with the outline proposal at the EPSCO meeting, and the Commission undertook to proceed to draft legislation with the aim of laying it before the EU Parliament early in the new year of 2023. And the proposed amendment to MDR and IVDR was published on the 6th of January of 2023, again under the reference number 2023/005 COD. Now, it's very important at this stage to recognise that this is a proposal. The amendment has not yet been approved by the European Parliament and Council, so nothing has changed as yet. So let's take a brief look at the changes that were proposed under this amendment. So it's proposed to amend Article 120 to directly extend the validity of current MDD and AIMD certificates that were valid on the 26th of May 2021, so the application date of the regulation, and have not been withdrawn. And that the extension of those certificates would be up to the following dates and is dependent upon the classification of the device. So for Class 3 and Class 2B implantable devices, with a number of exceptions, those being sutures, staples, dental fillings, dental braces, tooth crowns, screws, wedges, plates, wires, pins, clips, and connectors, that date would be extended to the 31st of December 2027. Now, for Class 2B devices, other than those just listed above, the Class 2A devices, and for Class 1 sterile devices and measuring function devices, so Class 1 devices with notified body oversight, that date would move out to the 31st of December 2028. Now, certificates that were valid on the application date, 26th of May 2021, but have since expired, can also be extended, but only if one of the following conditions is met. So a signed agreement for acceptance of that device to MDR was in place with a notified body before the certificate expired, or a competent authority has granted a derogation for the device under Article 59(1) of MDR, or has required the manufacturer to carry out conformity assessment under Article 97(1) of MDR in accordance with the MDCG guidance 2022-18. The other thing to note is that this also only applies to certificates that expire prior to the date of entry into force for the proposed amendment. This is a date that we don't yet know yet because it hasn't yet been approved. Also included the date by which devices that did not require notified body involvement under the MDD, so primarily Class 1, that had a valid MDD DOC signed prior to the 26th of May 2021 can be placed on the market up until the 31st of December 2028. There are, however, conditions that need to be met to use these potential extensions. So those conditions are as follows. Devices must continue to comply with the requirements of the MDD or the AIMD, whichever is applicable. There are to be no significant changes to the design or intended purpose of those devices. Devices must not present an unacceptable risk to health and safety of patients, users, or third parties. And very importantly, no later than the 26th of May 2024, the manufacturer must have an MDR compliant quality management system in place. By that same date, the manufacturer must also have filed an application for MDR conformity assessment with a notified body. There's an additional provision that's been introduced here as well, which talks about substitute devices. So this is circumstances where a manufacturer would intend to replace a legacy device with a next generation device, another one coming along, the provisions within this amendment would allow manufacturers to do that, as opposed to lodging an application for the legacy device. So no later than the September of that same year, so 3 months later, the manufacturer and the notified body must have signed a written agreement to conduct conformity assessment. So the notified body must have accepted the application from the manufacturer. There is still the ongoing requirement for post-market surveillance, vigilance, and registration of economic operators to be carried out to the requirements of MDR during this period of time. So what are the further considerations around this? So the notified body that issued the MDD or AMD certificate continues to be responsible for the surveillance of that device unless that responsibility is transferred by agreement to the notified body undertaking the MDR conformity assessment. And that surveillance must be transferred to the notified body contracted for MDR assessment no later than the 26th of September 2024. There is provision that for Class 3 custom-made implantable devices, they can be placed on the market under Article 52.8 and Annex 13 of the MDR until the 26th of May 2026 without a notified body certificate, provided that an application for MDR assessment has been lodged by the 26th of May 2024 and accepted by the notified body by the 26th of September of that year. Now, there is within this proposed amendment also a change that is proposed for IVDR as well. So for both MDR and IVDR, it is proposed to remove the 1-year sell-off period that's detailed under paragraph 4 of Article 120 in the MDR and paragraph 4 of Article 110 in IVDR, which has previously stopped the putting into service of devices placed on the market under the directives 1 year after the end of the transition period. So for manufacturers, what are the strategic considerations around this proposed amendment? So this proposal still requires the bulk of the MDR quality management system transition to be completed. Post-market surveillance, vigilance, and economic operator registration requirements under MDR are required now, so that doesn't change. In order to make an application to a notified body, an update to the quality manual, the updating of clinical evaluation procedures, the creation of a clinical evaluation plan, a post-market surveillance plan, and other deliverables are all required in order to make an application to a notified body for assessment. Utilizing this extended period extends the period when no significant changes in the design or intended purpose can be made to the products concerned. And within that period, competitors who may have already made the transition to MDR could very well be changing the standard of care through innovation in new products and potentially taking market share. One thing that this proposal does do is it potentially reduces the need for remediations to occur to certificates under Article 97.1 and the very recently published MDCG guidance 2022-18. And it does that by extending potentially extending short-dated or expired certificates under the condition where manufacturers have already engaged with the notified body for MDR assessment. So let's take a look at what deliverables would be required by when under this proposed amendment. So if we look at our timeline going between now and 2028, recognizing that the deadline for is different for different class devices. So for Class 3s and Class 2B implantables, that deadline is the end of 2027, and for everything else, it's end of 2028. So as we talked about earlier, we are required to have MDR compliant processes for post-market surveillance and for vigilance now, along with meeting the requirements for registration of economic operators, and that's obviously dependent upon the timeline for EUDAMED. No later than May of 2024, to make the application to a notified body for MDR assessment, that will require manufacturers to submit to the notified body quality policy, quality objectives, a quality manual that has been updated to the requirements of MDR, and also MDR compliant processes for keeping post-market surveillance plans, post-market clinical follow-up plans, vigilance procedures, etc. up to date, and also procedures for keeping up-to-date clinical evaluation plans. In addition, manufacturers also have to submit a sample declaration of conformity to MDR and a sample clinical evaluation plan, sample post-market surveillance plan, and sample post-market clinical follow-up plan, each for the highest classification device that will go under any given certificate. So an awful lot of work has to be completed under the QMS and to certain deliverables in order to actually facilitate the act of doing a submission for assessment to a notified body and having that submission accepted. And then in order to actually complete the assessment to MDR, both through a quality management system audit and then the audit of technical documentation, under the QMS, the whole transition to MDR needs to be accommodated. So that means technical documentation procedures that are compliant to MDR, along with procedures for managing UDI, UDAMED, clinical evaluation, risk management, and economic operators. And then on the technical documentation side, at least one set of technical documentation is required, structured to Annex 2, including a GSPR checklist, all the supporting evidence for that, updated risk management file, updated labeling, the clinical evaluation, post-market surveillance report, or a PSUR, and then for the highest risk devices, a summary of safety and clinical performance. So quite a lot still to be done under there. If there's anything that you would require help or assistance or guidance on with respect to any of those deliverables, please do not hesitate to reach out to Celegence. It's very important to recognize that when planning the timeline for the MDR transition, even in light of these proposed changes, that the assessment time for MDR is quite long. So in accordance with a recently published survey by the Commission on the progress of applications through notified bodies, it typically takes between 13 and 18 months for an application to go from the completeness check through to certification. So while this timeline may appear quite long in the context of doing an application or multiple applications for multiple products, the timeline is still quite long, and that needs to be accommodated. So in conclusion, now is not the time for manufacturers to take their foot off the gas in terms of MDR transition. Manufacturers should still push forward. Launching an application and securing notified body engagement would be a prerequisite for any extension past the 26th of May 2024. Capacity at notified bodies will continue to be a factor, and thus any delay in making an application for assessment is a business risk. And achieving MDR compliance enables manufacturers to continue to innovate by putting new products on the market or making product changes. So from what we know today, these new proposals may give some additional flexibility to manufacturers to reassess decisions on things like expedited versus standard reviews across their product portfolios due to the additional time available. And it may also potentially give more time and expand the range of options for manufacturers struggling to select or engage notified bodies. Thank you for your time today. If you have any further questions regarding this or any other aspects associated with the Medical Devices Regulation or IVD regulation, please do not hesitate to reach out to Celegence. Thank you.